Most people spend their whole lives afraid of the thing I wake up thinking about every morning. I'm Edna Mae Calloway, and I am 108 years old. And somewhere along the way, I stopped being afraid of dying, and I've been trying to figure out how to explain that to people ever since. I was born in 1916 in a little town in rural Georgia that doesn't exist anymore, at least not the way it was then. My mother delivered me in the same bed she'd been born in, and the midwife who came to help her had helped birth half the county. That's the kind of world I came into, one where everything was close together, the living and the dying, the eating and the going hungry, the love and the leaving. You didn't have to go looking for the hard parts of life because they were always right there next to you at the table. My father died when I was 11. Typhoid fever. He was gone in 9 days from the first sign of sickness to the morning my mother sat down on the porch steps and put her face in her hands. I remember standing behind the screen door watching her shoulders shake and thinking, she's breaking, she's going to break apart right here in front of me. But she didn't. She sat there a long time, and then she stood up and she went inside and she started making breakfast. I didn't understand that then. I do now. What she was doing wasn't pretending everything was fine. She wasn't pushing down grief or being strong for us, not in the way people mean when they say that. She was just continuing. She was saying, without words, that life makes you keep going, even when you don't see the reason for it yet, that the reason comes later, sometimes much later, and you have to still be standing when it arrives. I got married at 19 to a man named Robert Calloway, who had the most serious face I had ever seen on a young person. He looked like a man who had already decided exactly who he was going to be and was simply going about the business of becoming it. I fell in love with that seriousness. I thought it meant he would never leave. And he didn't, not for 53 years, not until his heart finally gave out on a Tuesday afternoon in October while he was raking leaves in the backyard. Our son found him. He was peaceful, they said, like he just sat down to rest. We had 4 children, Robert and I. We lost one of them. Our second boy, Thomas, was killed in Vietnam in 1968. He was 22 years old, and he had his father's serious face and my mother's stubborn patience, and he was funny in a way that could make a whole room turn toward him without him even trying. When the men in uniform came to the door, I remember the sound of my own breathing changing, like my body understood what was happening before my mind would let it. People ask me how you survive something like that, losing a child, and I tell them the truth, which is that you don't survive it, not exactly. It becomes part of you in a way that nothing else does. Thomas didn't leave my life when he died. He changed the shape of it. There isn't a single year that's passed since 1968 that I haven't talked to him in some way, in my head, out loud, sometimes when I'm alone. I don't think that's unusual. I think when you love someone that completely and they go, you just keep the conversation going on your side because the alternative is to pretend they were finished. And they weren't finished. He wasn't finished. I lived through 2 world wars, the Depression, the polio years, the civil rights years, things that felt like the world was ending and somehow weren't. I watched television get invented, and then computers, and then little devices that hold more knowledge than any library I ever walked into, and I will be honest with you, most of it still astonishes me. But here is what I have noticed across all of it. Across 108 years of watching the world change and change and change again. The thing that stays the same is what people need from each other. To be seen, to be told their life matters, to not be alone in the hard moments. That never changed, not once. Now, about dying. People get uncomfortable when I bring it up casually, which I do because at my age, it would be strange not to. My doctor visits me at home now, and he's a good man, a kind man, and sometimes I catch him choosing his words very carefully around the subject like he's afraid he might upset me. And I want to tell him, honey, I've been watching people die since I was 11 years old. Death is not a stranger I'm about to meet for the first time. It's more like a neighbor I've been aware of my whole life who's finally going to knock on my door. What I'm not afraid of is the fact of it. I've had 108 years. I have outlived my husband, one of my children, most of my friends, and two of my grandchildren, which is the kind of thing that breaks something in you and also, strangely, makes you less afraid of your own end, because you know that the people you love are already on the other side of it, waiting or not waiting, existing or not existing, but either way, not suffering anymore. And that brings me something close to peace. What I do think about is whether I have said the things I needed to say, whether the people I love know that I love them in the specific way I love them, not just in general, but in the details. My daughter Eleanor makes the same sound my mother used to make when she's concentrating on something, a little hum, barely audible, and every time I hear it, I feel like time folds in on itself and I'm back in my mother's kitchen and my mother is still alive. I want Eleanor to know that she carries my mother in her without even knowing it, that the people we come from don't disappear, they just change form. I'm not afraid to die because I have been loved well. I want to say that clearly because I think people assume that the secret to a long life is diet or exercise or attitude, and maybe those things play a part. I wouldn't know. I've eaten butter my whole life, and I've never been what you'd call an optimist. But what has sustained me, truly, is that I have loved people, and they have loved me back, and that exchange, that simple human exchange, turns out to be the most durable thing in the world, more durable than the body, more durable than memory even at the end. There's a photograph on my nightstand of Robert and me taken in 1947. We look so young, it's almost alarming. He has his arm around my shoulder and I'm laughing at something, I can't remember what, and he's looking at me instead of the camera with that serious face of his that meant he was happier than he knew how to say. I look at that photograph every morning when I wake up and every night before I sleep. And I don't feel sad. I feel grateful, which is not something I expected to feel at the end of all this. Gratitude is not a feeling I associate with loss, but there it is. If you're young and you're listening to me, I don't want to tell you not to be afraid. Fear is not always the wrong response to things. But I would ask you to consider the possibility that the life you're building right now, the people you're choosing, the love you're willing to give and receive, that's what you'll be thinking about at the end, not what you accomplished, not what you accumulated, whether you were present for the people who needed you to be present, whether you let yourself be loved, whether you paid attention. I have paid attention. For 108 years, I have paid attention, and what I can tell you from this side of it is that it was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything.